It is a National Electrical Code violation to have disconnects for air conditioning condenser units installed outside under a deck with less than 6.5 feet of headroom. National Electrical Code Section 110.26 addresses workspace requirements and specifically mentions headroom. National Electrical Code 110.26 states that equipment shall not be installed in a location where it will be exposed to physical damage. The disconnect for an air conditioning condenser unit is considered equipment. Installing it under a deck with less than 6.5 feet of headroom exposes it to the risk of physical damage from people or objects hitting it. Now let's consider possible exceptions. There is an exception to this rule in National Electrical Code 110.26 for equipment that is installed as part of a listed assembly. However, the disconnects for air conditioning condenser units are typically not part of a listed assembly. Therefore, the exception generally does not apply in this scenario. Here's what you need to do to correct the violation. The disconnect should be relocated to a location where there is at least 6.5 feet of headroom. It is important to always consult the latest edition of the National Electrical Code and local amendments for the most accurate and up-to-date information. Headroom requirements are essential for ensuring safe access and preventing physical damage to electrical equipment. Insufficient headroom can lead to accidental contact with energized parts or damage to the equipment itself. This can create safety hazards for personnel working on or near the equipment, as well as potential for equipment failure. When installing electrical equipment, carefully consider the location and ensure that it meets the minimum headroom requirements specified in the National Electrical Code. This includes taking into account any obstructions or structural elements that may reduce the available headroom. If there is any doubt about whether a particular installation meets the code requirements, it is always best to consult with a qualified electrical inspector or engineer. They can provide guidance on the specific requirements for your location and help you ensure that your electrical installation is safe and code compliant. Remember, electrical safety is paramount. By following the National Electrical Code requirements for headroom and other safety measures, you can help protect yourself and others from electrical hazards. Ignoring these requirements can have serious consequences, including electric shock, fire, and property damage. Always prioritize safety and consult with qualified professionals when working with electrical equipment. Here are some additional considerations regarding headroom requirements for electrical equipment. Firstly, the 6.5 feet headroom requirement is a minimum. In some cases, more headroom may be necessary to provide adequate access for maintenance and repair. Secondly, consider the type of equipment being installed. Some equipment may require more headroom than others, depending on its size and configuration. Thirdly, be aware of any local amendments to the National Electrical Code. Some jurisdictions may have more stringent headroom requirements than those specified in the National Electrical Code. Fourthly, ensure that the headroom is maintained throughout the entire workspace. This means that there should be no obstructions or structural elements that reduce the headroom below the minimum requirement. Fifthly, if the equipment is located in a damp or wet location, additional precautions may be necessary to protect it from moisture. This may include providing additional headroom or using waterproof enclosures. Sixthly, if the equipment is located in a hazardous location, such as an area where flammable materials are present, special precautions must be taken to prevent explosions or fires. This may include using explosion-proof equipment and providing adequate ventilation. Seventhly, always follow the manufacturer's instructions for installation and maintenance. The manufacturer may have specific requirements for headroom or other safety measures. Eighthly, regularly inspect the electrical equipment to ensure that it is in good working condition and that there are no signs of damage or deterioration. Ninthly, if you identify any potential hazards, such as damaged equipment or inadequate headroom, take immediate action to correct the problem. Tenthly, never attempt to repair or maintain electrical equipment unless you are qualified to do so. The electrical work should only be performed by qualified electricians who are familiar with the National Electrical Code and other safety regulations. Here are some specific examples of how the headroom requirements might apply in different situations. In a commercial building, The electrical panel room must have adequate headroom to allow electricians to safely access and work on the panels. In a residential dwelling, the service entrance equipment must have adequate headroom to allow the utility company to safely connect and disconnect power. In an industrial facility, the motor control centers must have adequate headroom to allow technicians to safely troubleshoot and repair the motors. In a data center, the uninterruptible power supply systems must have adequate headroom to allow technicians to safely maintain and repair the system. In a hospital, the emergency power systems must have adequate headroom to allow technicians to safely test and maintain the systems. In a school, the fire alarm systems must have adequate headroom to allow technicians to safely inspect and maintain the systems. In a public transportation facility, the signaling systems must have adequate headroom to allow technicians to safely maintain and repair the systems. In a wastewater treatment plant, the process control systems must have adequate headroom to allow technicians to safely troubleshoot and repair the systems. In a manufacturing plant, the automated machinery must have adequate headroom to allow technicians to safely maintain and repair the systems. Remember, headroom requirements are not just about meeting the National Electrical Code. They are also about protecting the safety of people and property. By following the National Electrical Code and other safety regulations, you can help ensure that your electrical installations are safe and reliable. Also, if you have any questions or concerns about headroom requirements, consult with a qualified electrical inspector or engineer. They can provide guidance on the specific requirements for your location and help you ensure that your electrical installation is safe and code compliant. They can also help you identify any potential hazards and recommend corrective actions. Headroom isn't the only workspace requirement, as adequate workspace depth is also a must to allow personnel to safely work around electrical equipment. The depth of the workspace is measured from the front of the equipment to the nearest obstruction. The National Electrical Code specifies minimum workspace depths based on the voltage of the equipment and the presence of exposed live parts. When determining the required workspace depth, consider the type of work that will be performed on the equipment. For example, if the equipment will require frequent maintenance or repair, a greater workspace depth may be necessary. Also consider the size and configuration of the equipment. Larger equipment may require a greater workspace depth to allow for adequate access. Be aware of any local amendments to the National Electrical Code that may affect the workspace depth requirement. Always maintain the required workspace depth. Do not store materials or equipment in the workspace, as this can obstruct access and create a safety hazard. Regularly inspect the workspace to ensure that it is clear of obstructions. Correct any problems that are identified. Ensure that the workspace is adequately lit. Adequate lighting is essential for safe working conditions. Install lighting fixtures that provide sufficient illumination for the tasks being performed. Consider the use of task lighting to provide additional illumination in specific areas. Ensure that the lighting fixtures are properly maintained and that they are not obstructed by equipment or materials. Also ensure that the workspace is properly ventilated. Adequate ventilation is essential for removing heat and fumes. Install ventilation systems that provide sufficient airflow to maintain a comfortable working environment. Ensure that the ventilation systems are properly maintained and that they are not obstructed by equipment or materials. Consider the use of exhaust fans to remove fumes from specific areas. Provide adequate grounding for the electrical equipment. Grounding is essential for preventing electrical shock hazards. Ensure that the electrical equipment is properly grounded in accordance with the National Electrical Code. Regularly inspect the grounding system to ensure that it is in good working condition. Correct any problems that are identified. Provide personal protective equipment for workers who are working in the workspace. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, can help protect workers from electrical shock, burns, and other injuries. Provide workers with appropriate PPE such as gloves, safety glasses, and hearing protection. Ensure that workers are properly trained in the use of PPE. Enforce the use of PPE in the workspace. By following these guidelines, you can help ensure that the workspace is safe and compliant with the National Electrical Code. Remember, a safe workspace is essential for protecting the health and safety of workers and for preventing accidents and injuries. It is also important to remember that the National Electrical Code is a minimum standard. In some cases, it may be necessary to exceed the National Electrical Code requirements to provide a safe and functional workspace. When in doubt, consult with a qualified electrical engineer or safety professional. They can help you assess the specific hazards in your workplace and recommend appropriate safety measures. Safety is everyone's responsibility. By working together, we can create a safe and healthy work environment for all.